How often do so-called minor crimes such as vandalism or truancy lead to major violations by our teens and preteens? Hi, I'm Susan Robinson. On this edition of Take 53, we'll find out about an exciting new program available only here in the city of Cupertino to help identify at-risk youth and turn their lives around. So stay tuned to find out about the Cupertino Youth Outreach Program with Officer Terry Mullen. That's all next here on Take 53.
Tell me, what is in? Everybody, I want to know. In, yeah. Oh, what is in? Ooh, yeah. What is in? Everybody, tell me, I got to know. What is in? What's in?
Hey, Brian. Dubs. Listen, you want to get high? I got some great stuff.
No, thanks, Mike. That junk's bad news.
Smart kid. He doesn't need that stuff. Nobody does. I'm McGruff, the crime dog. Now, watch these kids.
I'm bored. Why don't we get wasted?
Why don't you get real?
I've got a better idea. Why don't you get lost?
See that? It's happening everywhere. So, if anyone ever wants to turn you on, just turn them off. It's a great way to help take a bite out of crime.
Welcome to Take 53. I'm Susan Robinson, here with Cupertino Youth Probation Officer Terry Mullen. Terry, thanks for joining me on Take 53 today.
Thanks for having me.
The Youth Outreach Program sounds really promising. Can you tell us basically how it works and how it got started?
Well, Susan, back in the 1970s, there were a number of youth service bureaus throughout the county. The purpose of the bureaus was to divert youngsters who were at some risk of entering the juvenile justice system, also to provide some services toward delinquency prevention. Funding dried up for those services at some point, and it was a great loss. We feel over the years we've felt that loss. So recently, well, in the beginning of this year, the probation department spoke with a number of cities throughout the valley about putting together a youth outreach program, and we're fortunate that Cupertino is one of the cities that thought it would be beneficial, and we're up and running now, and we've been running since February of this year.
That's great. So it is based here in the city of Cupertino, and do you strictly take youth from here?
Yes, the youngsters who are eligible for the program are kids that live in Cupertino or go to school at a Cupertino school. That's pretty much who's eligible, and then there are other criteria that I look at to determine who to accept and who not to accept.
I see. So this is a program you really needed, and luckily these agencies came together to fund it.
We're fortunate. The program is funded by the Fremont Union School District. That's a high school district in Cupertino. The Cupertino Union School District, that's the elementary and junior high district. The probation department and the city of Cupertino. Although the sheriff's department isn't actually a funding agency, they've been a great assistance to me, and they've provided me not only support of manpower, but also they've provided me with some equipment that was necessary for me.
That's great. Okay, before this program was in existence, what would have been the normal course of action for a juvenile offender?
Well, if a youngster was cited historically by, say, the sheriff's department, the police report would go down to the juvenile probation department. It, at that point, would be entered into a computer system, and immediately there's some record of that offense at the juvenile probation department. At that point, the case would be assigned to a deputy who would send a notice to have a hearing on the citation to determine what would be an appropriate action. The difference here is that I screen all the citations issued to Cupertino youth each morning at the sheriff's department. Kids that I think are appropriate for a diversion. By diversion, I mean diverting the youngster out of the normal juvenile justice system. I I intercept at the Sheriff's Department so they don't reach juvenile hall. Therefore, they don't get entered into the computer system at juvenile hall. At that point, I send out a notice to have a hearing on the case with the youngster and a parent, and decide on an appropriate action.
I see. So you actually divert them from having to go down to juvenile hall, and you speak with them directly. You also mentioned that you find the ones which are appropriate. How do you decide on which teens are appropriate for your program?
Well, I do a record check on the youngsters to make sure they have no history with the department. And if they have a very minor history, I might consider accepting the case. Also, the gravity or the seriousness of the offense that they were cited for plays a role. The purpose of the program is to divert kids out of the system who don't need to be in the system. It's clear that there are some youngsters who really do need to be in the system, and those I don't accept in this program.
I see. I've mentioned and you've mentioned at-risk teens. What exactly are at-risk teens, and what are the signs, the physical or mental signs, to show that a teen is possibly at risk?
It's difficult to be specific on what the signs of an at-risk youngster are. The term at-risk refers to if we have some reason to believe that the youngster is going to or may enter the juvenile justice system in the near future or in the future, that child is at risk. And it's our intent and our function to intervene before the entry into the system actually takes place. As far as what are the symptoms of a youngster who's at risk, I think that varies so much it's difficult to answer that, but I think I would say that parents who know the child best might instinctively know that something is happening, and they might consider the child at risk of entering the system. And if they call me, I'd be glad to try to help if I can.
Okay, great. So basically your experience with youth helps you identify an at-risk teen.
I think so.
Okay, we need to go for our first break. But when we return to Take 53, we'll find out more about how the Cupertino Youth Outreach Program works.
Northern 3 Edwards 65.
6 months ago, this 12-year-old thought he was just out having a little fun. Where do you go before things get out of hand? He got help at a youth center. They got help from the United Way. All because the United Way got help from you. The United Way. It brings out the best in all of us.
I worked very hard. Let me tell you, I made a lot of sacrifices, trying to be as good as I could be. And I did not want to do anything that was going to short-circuit that. Drinking, drugs, it doesn't make sense. I knew that they were counter to what I was working for. It just doesn't make sense.
Welcome back to Take 53. I'm Susan Robinson, here with Youth Probation Officer Terry Mullen to find out more about the Cupertino Youth Outreach Program. Terry, we were talking about your experience in dealing with youth. What special problems have you noticed that they face, especially today, and how does this program meet those special needs?
The numbers of referrals to the Juvenile Probation Department are staggering. The gravity of the offenses that probation officers and the juvenile court are dealing with are getting more and more serious. The special needs that the children that I'm working with have is to actually have some intervention into their lives. Because traditionally or historically, because of the volume that we deal with down at the probation department and the juvenile court system, youngsters who are at the lower end of the gravity scale, kids who are committing criminal activity, but not real serious criminal activity, are not given the time that I think is really necessary to divert them and prevent them from going on to further criminal activity, more serious criminal activity. To me, this program is one of the most important programs I've seen in 25 years as a probation officer, because I am able to intervene with these youngsters at the lower end and give them services that were not available in the past just due to the high numbers that the officers are dealing with.
That's interesting. You mentioned that the numbers are staggering that you receive in this program. Why would you say the numbers of youth offenders are increasing, or that you're seeing more?
Well, I'm seeing more. I can only surmise the reason, but I think it's because the word is getting out in the community that the program's here. The sheriff's deputies are aware that the program's here. They're aware that the word diversion doesn't mean to toss out a case and not do anything with it. I think people are becoming more aware that diversion really means that I am going to intervene and try to assist the child and the family to prevent any further criminal activity. In other words, I will do something with a case if it's referred to me. And I think the word's getting out on that, and I attribute that as a reason why I'm getting so many referrals.
So you can give the youth more personal attention.
Yes.
That they need. I see. Also, how large of a part do drug and alcohol abuse play in the teens that you see? And do you also discover other underlying problems in your dealings with the kids?
Yes, I think that drugs and alcohol specifically are a major problem, not just in Cupertino, but probably throughout the valley. I must say I'm taking an aggressive approach to youngsters who I feel are involved with substances, whether it's alcohol or any other kind of drugs. I have access to a program, a drug education program that I think is excellent, and I'm making a lot of referrals to that program. And yes, there are underlying problems. Much of the time I spot underlying problems when I'm dealing on the surface with a drug or alcohol problem, and then I try to deal with that problem.
So sometimes they come in for one excuse me, for one thing, and you discover other things underlying, and you refer them at that time.
That's true.
Now, do you refer them before dealing with the offense they came to you for, or do you kind of handle them both at once?
Well, see, I get referrals through a number of sources. The primary source is the Sheriff's Department through citations, but I also get referrals from the schools, from parents who've heard about the program. Those youngsters don't have a citation pending. They're not really involved in criminal activity, but they might be involved in activity that's borderline, for example, truancy or beyond control type behavior, and I try to intervene in those cases as well.
You mentioned earlier that the first thing you do when a youth comes in is you set up an interview between them and their parents. What happens after that, and what do you do in that initial meeting?
Those sessions are primarily for youngsters who've been cited by the Sheriff's Department or another police agency. What I do at the hearings is explain what the program is to them, explain that I have the authority to divert them out of the juvenile justice system so that they don't end up with a record down at juvenile hall. But certain things are expected of the youngster before I'm willing to do that for them. For example, most of the youngsters that I've dealt with on a citation basis are involved in public service work now at different places in Cupertino. They're writing me essays on what they've learned from the whole experience. If substance abuse is a part of the problem, I'm referring them for counseling in that regard. So whatever the problem is, I try to focus on that problem and deal with it. Once they complete that, then I'll close their case.
I see. I know you set up a compensation program. What is compensation? How does it differ from punishment? And what do most of these plans consist of?
Well, there are a couple of different kinds of compensation. There's restitution to victims. Some people who are victimized suffer some kind of financial loss. The youngster is responsible for that, and that's always a part of the contract that I have with the child, is that they reimburse the victim for any financial loss that they might have. But there's another, maybe even more important compensation to the community the youngster lives in, and that's in the form of public service work. and almost everybody that I deal with has to do some form of public service work, whether it's at the recycling center or at a convalescent hospital or what have you, but all these agencies are located in Cupertino, because it's my feeling that these youngsters owe something to the city of Cupertino. First of all, they live here, and secondly, if it weren't for the city of Cupertino, this program wouldn't exist. So there's some payback to the city.
I see, so they make restitution for what they did instead of just sending them off to juvenile hall.
That's correct.
Is there a certain age group that you see most often?
Well, usually the children are between 14 and 16, but I've seen them and I've dealt with them as young as 8 or 9 years old, and
wow,
as old as almost 18.
So all age ranges?
All age ranges.
What happens if they commit a subsequent offense? Do you set up another compensation program, or is that it?
It depends. The youngsters are told in no uncertain terms that if there's a subsequent violation, chances are that's going to be it, and the diversion program is over, and I'll send all the information down to the probation department. But there have been exceptions to that. There have been exceptions where I still feel I can work with the youngster, and I set up more compensation for them to do. So the general rule is, yeah, that's it, but there are exceptions.
I see. And since the parents do attend the initial hearing with the child, how involved do the parents become? Do they have a say in the type of program that is set up, or how involved do you allow the parents to be?
The way I try to structure the hearings that I have is that everybody has a voice in what the program is going to consist of. I have probably the final voice at deciding what the program will be, but everybody does have a say-so, and I do listen to what the parents have to say, and it's not unusual for me to add an element to the contract that was proposed by the parent that I hadn't even thought of. So yes, they have a voice, and so do the youngsters. They don't have to be in this program if they choose not to, but I can't remember anybody turning the program down up to this point.
So the parents have really responded positively to the program?
Very positively. I think, somewhat to my surprise, the parents are pleased that there is some intervention and that these offenses aren't being treated lightly, but that the child is held accountable. And I think they can see that there's a great value in that. And the purpose of the program is to prevent further criminal activity with the youngsters.
So they're probably relieved there's something out there besides just going to juvenile hall.
Well, they are. And they're also relieved that the youngster is held accountable and is really made to do something to compensate for what he's done or she's done.
I see. I know one incentive to continue the program is to identify at-risk teens. What other incentives have you noticed to really continue the outreach program and begin an outreach program in other cities?
Well, actually, there is an outreach program starting right now in Sunnyvale. There's somewhat of an outreach program beginning in central San Jose. And I think that the cities and the schools and the police agencies are beginning to realize that the system is overburdened. The juvenile court system, like all court systems, is overburdened. And the youngsters at the lower end of the gravity scale need attention. And I think that all the communities are beginning to see that, because there's a payoff in the long run, and that is hopefully lightening up the court system and the probation system and all those legal systems if we can do something and intervene early on in the kid's life.
What would you say has really been some positive outcomes so far from the program?
There have been a lot of positive outcomes. I hear from youngsters who've completed the program that have told me that they're glad that this happened, so that they could have a better understanding of what the justice system is, and they learn to be accountable for their behavior through the essays that the kids have written me. I think that they've, in almost all cases, indicate that they've learned a great deal. I think that the parents learn now that there's a resource out there that they can, where they can go. There's somebody that they can call that will listen and try to help. many positive aspects to the program. There's a very good relationship now between myself as a probation officer in the school districts and the police department. It's very positive.
I think that says a lot, that even the teens, some of them actually appreciate having been through this program. I know you mentioned to me that some of them continue to volunteer at the place where they've donated their time.
That's true. That's not unusual for the youngsters to have to work, say, 20 hours at the recycling center, but to continue volunteering their own time even after they're finished with the program. That's not unusual.
I think that says a lot. We need to take our final break. And when we return to Take 53, we'll find out more about what the reactions have been like from the teens themselves as well as from their parents. Stay tuned for Take 53.
Okay, kids, I'm here to teach you something really important, and you got to remember it because I'm going to test you on it later. Now listen carefully. Here we go. Drinking and driving don't mix. Did you hear what I said? Anybody who drinks alcohol should not drive a car. Nobody under any circumstance should drink and drive. It's dangerous and could cause a crash. I'm back with a pop quiz. Now, what were you supposed to remember? That's right. Drinking and driving don't mix. You passed. Now go see if your parents do.
Randy Travis on strings. Branford Marsalis on the horn. Paul Schaefer on keys. Carly Simon on lead. There are a lot of different parts to play in the American Red Cross. Play your part.
And we're back for some final comments about the Cupertino Youth Outreach Program with Officer Terry Mullen. Now, are there plans to continue the program, and how long is funding expected to last?
The program has been funded for 18 months, so that's through the summer of '91. Hopefully, it'll continue to be funded, and I hope it'll go on forever.
Of course, it sounds like it's been really helpful to a lot of teens.
I think so, and I hope that everybody recognizes it.
What is needed to continue the program? Just the support of these agencies to continue? Do you need more support from the community?
I think I've gotten incredible support from everywhere, from the community, from the city managers, the sheriff's department, my peers at the probation department. I think everybody's been supportive. What's needed to continue the program, I guess it's just that continued support.
That's great. I was just going to ask you, what type of responses have you had from your co-workers, from the officers in the field, the sheriff's department?
My co-workers, my fellow probation officers, I think are pleased with the program because every case that I can divert and handle in the field, they don't need to deal with, and they can deal with kids who really need to be in the system that they're working in. As far as from the police agencies, I deal mostly with the sheriff's department, the officers who work out of the West Side substation in Saratoga. I've spoken with all the officers at the different squad meetings, and they're all aware of the program, and they've been very, very supportive. In fact, what I tried to do is, once I complete a case, I write a memo to the officer that did the initial citations so that they know the result of what happened in the case. So it keeps them aware of what's happening, and I think they appreciate that, and we have a good relationship. We help each other.
Is that unusual for the officers to know the outcome of the citations they write?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Because, like I said, the probation system is so big and so overrun with cases right now. It's difficult to process the cases, much less advise the individual officers of dispositions. So absolutely, it's unusual, and I think it's appreciated.
I believe you've had officers that have specifically asked for youth to be placed in the program. Is that true?
A number of times, yeah. The officers that I work with routinely have, on a number of occasions, referred kids to me because they know that something will happen with the case.
Also, we've spoken a little bit about the reactions from the teens themselves. I take it it's really been positive, and from their parents.
Well, for the most part, the reaction of the teens has been positive. That's not 100%. There are some kids that don't want necessarily to be held accountable for their misconduct, but for the most part, it has been very positive. From the parents, it's close to 100% positive. I've gotten hardly any negative reaction from the parents. Like I said, I think most of them are pleased that there is a program like this.
Were you surprised to see such a positive reaction from the parents? I would expect more of a defensive attitude of their children.
Yeah, I was surprised at first, but then I became more aware that really we are offering them something that's unique. It's something that wasn't available in the past, isn't available today in a lot of areas, and so I think that they appreciate that. So I'm not surprised anymore, but I was at first.
I see. Now, is the program here, it's relatively new, it's been going about a year now?
Since February.
Since February. Is this kind of a model for other programs? Will you be helping out with other programs? Do they contact you at all?
I hope it's a model for other programs.
Sure.
Like I said, we do have a program that's starting up right now in Sunnyvale. That program is funded by the Probation Department and the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety. So there are some differences in that the city and the school districts aren't part of the funding agencies of the program. But I'm working closely with the officer assigned to that program because we do have a lot of crossover between Sunnyvale and Cupertino. So I'm trying to be helpful to him, and I'm sure he'll be helpful to me as well. So I'm here to help put together other programs if the need arises.
So the programs are not exactly the same, but they are compatible.
They are very compatible.
Okay, that's great. Now, where can parents call to get more information, or if they have questions we haven't covered? Is there some place that parents can reach you to find out more about the program? Is there a phone number?
I have voicemail through the Fremont Union School District, and the number is 522-2262. And I'd welcome anybody calling me. That number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they could always call and leave me a message, and I will get back. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get back, but I will get back.
That phone number is going to go on the screen. Now, can parents contact you directly if they feel that their teen has a need for this, or do you usually get it directly from the sheriff's department?
Well, I usually get it from the sheriff or from the schools, but I would welcome parents calling me. I mean, I have parents call me regularly.
With concerns?
Sure, and I'd be glad to talk to people about that, and if I can help, I will. I can't guarantee I'll be able to help, but I'll do my best.
Okay, great. That's about all the time we have. It's been fascinating. Sounds like a promising program. I wish you all the luck in its continued success. I'm sure I and the other residents of Cupertino hope it continues for years. It sounds like it's really needed here and in other areas. Thanks for taking your time to join us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on this edition of Take 53. Good night.